I was watching a YouTube channel the other day, Scholar Gladiatoria, with Matt Easton presenting it. He talks all about weapons use and swords, and in this particular one he actually mentions me, and he mentions the Modern History TV channel. In particular because he was talking about two-handed weapon use from horseback, and I thought that's something I should investigate in a little bit more detail. So that's exactly what this video is all about. How can you use a two-handed weapon on a horse? So I've got some of my two-handed weapons here. I have my tournament poleaxe. This is a museum quality replica. It's blunted, it's rebated, which again is a very medieval term. It doesn't mean it won't hurt or kill if it hits somebody, but it isn't specifically sharpened or pointed. This does resemble a meat tenderizer, which is exactly what it is. This is designed for imparting impact to the target. We obviously have pyramidal bolts as well, so theoretically if you want to subdue somebody you could hit them that way and possibly not kill them. And then we have the bladed axe, which would be razor sharp if it wasn't designed for tournament. And last but not least, the top spike. This one again is blunted quite nicely, beautifully shaped actually. So this is a high status weapon. It's quite heavy, but it doesn't feel quite so heavy when you're in harness actually. When you're on foot without armor on, it does feel quite heavy. But it is in fact, I'll weigh it. It is in fact 3.5 kilos in weight, or 8 pounds. So it's actually quite heavy. And of course the weight distribution of this kind of weapon is very end heavy. So when I'm doing a simulation, I've got some ideas about how to simulate that. Trouble is, using this on horseback is going to be necessarily quite dangerous, but I might try it, but we'll see. I have another much lighter bec de corbin, crow's beak. This type of device, this crow's beak or pick, is mentioned in the records of the Battle of Agincourt as something that a lot of the archers actually used. And I think, for me, for my money anyway, this kind of vicious point is designed to avoid sticking into a target, and it's also particularly designed to get through armour. It won't get through all armour, but it will get through some of the thinner armour, and you can hook with it as well. And it has a kind of crushing end as well. This is a sharp though, so I certainly won't be getting this anywhere near a horse because it's just too many things that can go wrong when you're doing testing. And it is completely lethal, of course. This one is much lighter. This one weighs just under 2 kilos or about 4 pounds. So this is much, much lighter. This is much faster than my other poleaxe. I have a training poleaxe. This is slightly longer than my tournament poleaxe. This one's made of wood, slightly different dimensions, doesn't have quite the same weight, but being wood, it's not going to do too much damage to anybody. So I might try this on horseback. And last but not least, because I wanted to test out the distribution of weight on horseback, because the way a weapon works and how it feels in the hand isn't just to do with how absolutely heavy it is, it's where the balance is. So I have followed a strong tradition. I have wrapped the end of this pole in lead. I've just quickly stapled it here, and then I've tied it with a piece of rope just to keep it all together. So this has a small amount of lead on the end, which means that it balances, what is that, 2/3 of the way there. So this should respond a bit differently when I'm trying to use it as a practice two-handed weapon from horseback. Now, lead lead weights are of course completely used and completely normal in medieval combat, particularly in later medieval combat. The concept of a lead maul or a lead weighted club is heavily used. In fact, the archers at Agincourt were all armed with their longbows, of course, but then each man carried, we're not quite sure what this weapon was like, but it was a leaden maul. Now, it might have been a little bit like a hammer, like a sledgehammer, for example, with a lead head. And we do have some illustrations of that kind of thing. It's called mallets. But in other documents, it's called a maul, and it could have just been lead wrapped around a sturdy piece of ash. It could have actually had a hammer shape. It could even have been a hollow piece of steel filled with lead, because that would make it last a bit longer. But it was said that these things were on long handles, and if they hit you, you died. So they were quite fearsome, but they're also quite heavy. This isn't quite that fearsome or quite that heavy, and I quite like the look of wrapping something with rope. I might try this whole lead weighted element in another video, but we're going to try these and see if what Matt said makes sense. I have put together a new target. This is the SFK. I wonder if you can work out what that stands for. This, you will recognize the trusty helmet that I've used as a target in other videos, and you'll recognize the breastplate that has been shot with various different weapons, including medieval guns, medieval longbow arrows, and bits and pieces. So it's trusty, rusty. Key thing is it makes a noise though, which is also good for horse training, because every time I do one of these videos, I'm aware that I'm also training a horse. And I train off camera, of course, but training on a horse and crashing and bashing against targets is a really important part of it. So the SFK is going to be my target for today. Good boy. It's not so much climbing into the saddle with a mounting block and a medieval saddle, it's more sitting down into it. Right. Let's have a look at the size of the target relative to me. And we'll walk past it. Good boy. Now you can see I've got one hand free for a weapon, but I'm holding the reins. Good boy, good boy. So obviously with one hand, it's relatively easy just to hit. Good boy. And you're completely controlling everything. But that's a simple single-handed weapon. When we move to a two-handed weapon, obviously Matt talked about doing it this way. It's actually quite heavy with the end like that. Just go slowly. It's actually quite possible, if this was sharp, you could just hit and move on. It wouldn't be as good as a lance, but it's going to do quite a lot of damage. What we see, though, is reins being dropped. So effectively, like this. Good boy. I'll do it statically. Good boy. Right. So we see, good boy, stand. So we see quite a lot of close-in melees in the Crusader Bible, for example, or the Morgan Bible. We see a lot of close-in attacks like this. And the people are hitting hard and doing this. But it's pretty clear, at least I think it's likely to be the case, that that's bogged down. That's a static situation where horse is against foot, everybody's crowded together, and you're nice and static. And you can obviously swap hands quite easily and smack down really hard with a long, long poleaxe or something like this. My expedient weapons falling to pieces. Oh well, I should hit things slightly less hard. Let me show you what happens at a bit more speed. This is static. This is fairly easy. I can strike on this side, I can thrust, I can hit this way round, I can hit this way round. I can also, if I'm on this side, I can hit this way, I can hit this way, I can hit this way, I can hit this way. You know, so they've got a lot of flexibility with moving things. Notice I typically want to have my hand a bit further down to control it. So if I'm like this, it doesn't feel sensible. It feels like I need to use my hands as a bit of a pivot. Nice and straightforward. But if I am not riding the horse with reins, I could strike like this, but I am going to be constantly affecting the horse's neck reining and control. So I'd be better off just dropping them. So what I'm going to try to do now is go past just at a walk, drop the reins and see what we can do. So let's line that up. Come on then. Good boy. Good boy. So walk on. Good boy. Come on. Let me try that again. Good boy. Come on. Come on. Good boy. Set you up. Go in this direction. Right, one of the things I've noticed just by doing that is if the reins are left completely loose, Warlord tends to wander off because it's a big change in his control. So I'm going to tie a knot in the reins because that should make them less flappy and less sort of long and in the way. And if I ride him like this, maybe I can use some personal movement. Right, come on. Come on. Right. Good boy. Yep, I can hit quite hard that way, but I am only going at a walk. So let's try this a bit faster. Good boy. Line you up a bit. Good boy. Whoa, 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 whoa. Come on, come on. The problem, of course, is controlling the direction of your horse when your horse is not particularly trained to do it. When you are hitting, you are naturally moving your weight, which is different to the way you would move if you weren't striking somebody. So you're actually giving signals to the horse in a way that the horse doesn't necessarily understand. So from my perspective, you lean and try and hit, and you're actually shifting your weight on the horse, which is giving the horse a signal. So what you'd have to train the horse to ignore certain signals of weight movement as much as you would to get the horse going in a straight line. Now obviously one-on-one encounters are different. If it's a duel, if somebody is standing there and it doesn't really matter if I miss them a few times, then I can have lots and lots of goes at it. If however I'm in a line of cavalry and basically everybody is squashed together from the outside just in a solid mass, then maybe I wouldn't need to do anything with guiding my horse at all, because quite frankly my horse is going where all the other horses go. So you could imagine in a close-on melee combat situation where everybody is going in the same direction, very, very close together, knee to knee, then two-handed weapons would actually be quite useful. Although you'd probably want to just drop the two-handed weapon and pick up the reins if you wanted to use any more kind of extreme control. Now what I'm going to do next, I'm going to pick up my real poleaxe, my blunted tournament poleaxe, and have a go at swinging that at speed against the SFK and see what it does. I just better rearrange his head a little bit. Right, come on then. Right, good lad. Come on then, both of you. Good horse, good target. My leaden weapon is actually fraying at the edges. Right, let's get the actual poleaxe. There it is. Good boy. This is significantly heavier actually, but it's a little shorter. So let me just try this at speed against the man. Come on then. Whoa, 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 whoa. Good boy. Good boy. I would say that was perfectly possible. In fact, it felt very doable. Going at speed means you don't have to swing the weapon so fast because you've got the additional speed of the horse. I'm just going to do one more and then call it quits. But basically, Matt, you were correct in your assumptions about two-handed weapons from horseback. It is possible. You can do it. It has some advantages and some disadvantages. And as one of your famous catchphrases is, it depends very much on the context. Good boy.